all the funding.
Right.
And to me, that's so...
Yeah, because what they really mean is redistribute police funding.
Yeah.
And if you're saying refund, that sounds like more money.
No, slogans are tough, right? Like even Black Lives Matter. And then somebody wants to say all lives matter. By the way, I saw the funniest thing this week. Some church had put up on its message signboard out front, its marquee, that Jesus matters. And somebody put a cardboard sign next to it that said all gods matter. Oh, that's too good. That is too good. Yeah, slogans are tough because, you always want to say, well, that doesn't seem like a totalized or a total explanation for what's needed. But if it gets your attention, then I think it has done its job. So let's move from the Overton window to the article that we were given this week. I hope that some of you had a chance to read it about the new white flight. So in case you're not familiar with that term, as far as a slogan goes, it's a term for what happened in the 60s when blacks, newly liberated from legal segregation, began fanning out from the neighborhoods to which they had once been restricted. Traumatized at the thought of living in proximity to their perceived inferiors, white people put their houses on the market at fire sale prices and took flight to what is now called the suburbs. Anybody want to comment on that?
Well, now white people are moving back in, and black people can't afford the...
Right. The gentrification. There's another slogan, though, right? Most people don't know what the gentry are.
Will that change as working from home becomes more normal? They're talking about people dispersing even farther out.
Yes.
Because they can not be in an urban setting and still have the job and the income in town.
Yep. They are saying that this COVID crisis, we are going to see a shifting in real estate like we have not seen since the 60s.
I don't know. When we moved up, you couldn't even get a van to move up here.
Oh,
and you
wow.
had to pay to take it back because more people were moving to Oregon than were moving to California. So,
well, now we get into a very specific problem with this conversation we've been having. So on November 19th, the Wall Street Journal reporter Suen Huang interviewed white parents who are pulling their kids out of elite public high schools, schools known for sending graduates to the nation's top colleges. They're doing this, writes Huang, because the schools are too academically rigorous, too narrowly focused on subjects like math and science. And in the article, it says too Asian. Yeah.
No.
So in the article, it says white parents are putting their kids into private schools or moving to areas where the public schools are whiter, less Asian, and less demanding, where sports and music are also emphasized and educators value, as one parent put it, the whole child. So this, I've entitled Code Switch, but it could also be called Dog Whistle. White people are great at coming up with code words so that we don't have to talk about race, and we put the emphasis somewhere else. And so whether that is, and I have a list that I'll show you in a minute, but it is amazing when it comes to our children, how race is such a central issue, but we can use educational terms in order to not talk about race. So we code switch. We're very good at it. We know we can't talk about race, so we talk about other things.
well, we are talking about race a lot more.
Yes, you're right.
Acknowledging it. I mean, that's finally at least, and it has become very open.
Yep. So I want to show you a list of things that I have found people would prefer to talk about because they don't want to talk about race, this is another way to do it. So here's a list of some alternative topics by which you can accomplish the same thing. Property taxes are a big one. School lunch programs, extracurricular activities, sports participation, music programs, and then private schools or charter schools. Those are 6 things, as I have been tracking this over the last 10 years. Those are 6 things that I have figured out that people can talk about so that they don't have to talk about race. I'll put the list back up in a minute, but did you have anything else to add to the list? So let me put my list back up here and let's work through them one by one. Property taxes. So if you're not familiar with the history of banks redlining, literally drawing a red line around communities where people can get loans, the legacy of this is how our property taxes fund our schools and how people in different communities try and change the tax structure so that the money doesn't go towards education, partly because of who's being educated. You know, up till 2008, I had never voted in an election. I grew up in a tradition where you didn't want to get down in the mud and wrestle with the pigs, and so we did not participate in politics at all. We wanted to be in the world, but not of the world, right? So 2008 was the first time I had ever voted, and actually what made me vote wasn't necessarily the presidential election, a national issue. It was that I had become aware of how important funding was as a homeowner. I became aware of what property taxes go to. And that was very eye-opening to me. And I started looking at education funding, and I became very disturbed at what I found. So that's actually what compelled me to become politically active. Yeah. You know, I have the privilege, sometimes of having off-the-record conversations with people about how banks and real estate industry, it is racist on our behalf so that we don't have to feel like we're racist. I'm not racist. So we use words like, well, you know, safety. I want to make sure I feel safe. Or we use comfortable. I want to be in a neighborhood I'm comfortable with. Or we use resale value. Or we use property taxes. We want to put our kids in the best schools. Between those 4 things of safety, comfort, resale value, and public schools, we get to feel like we're not racist, but it's because the banks and the real estate is racist on our behalf. So we have outsourced our racism so that we get to be good white liberals and put up a Black Lives Matter sign in our window,
Which I have, yeah.
right, to signal our virtue. Well, I'm one of the good ones. And we get to do that, but because we have outsourced the racism to our institutions. This is what's called systemic racism.
Yes, it is.
Well, and this is why at times it isn't a matter of convincing racist individuals to not be racist. It's about changing the system. We need to stop focusing on trying to convince individuals to actually changing the policies.
Yeah. One more thing I want to just comment on with the time we have left is sports and music programs. And if you don't have kids currently, or you don't interact with parents, one of the things you may not realize that has changed so much in the last 20 years is that you now have to pay to play. Whether that's soccer or a clarinet, you have to pay to play because it's not part of the school budget anymore. And so sports activities and musical programs are funded out of parents' pockets. And so there is a classism built into this that intersects, this is what we call intersectionality, that intersects with race in a really powerful way. And if you don't interact with parents, you may not realize how much it has changed, even since I was in school. That the band that I was a part of and the football team that I was a part of, both of which have been the most influential, formative things I ever participated in besides church. That those two other things that had such a big impact on me, I couldn't participate in now because we were a lower income family. I couldn't afford to play because we couldn't afford to pay. So I would have been wandering around my neighborhood, not involved in organized sports or in music. And I would just be wandering around the neighborhood trying to do something because I was bored.
Well, they have.
So one final thing as we turn to wrap up here. This is going back to the article that we read, The New White Flight. It says, it occurs to me that this is the fruit of our dumbing down education in the name of self-esteem. This is what we get for making the work easier instead of demanding the students work harder and parents be more involved. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the author of the article on this, but I think there are two interesting things in here. One is self-esteem being a primary emphasis of education now, but also the demand that it puts on parents. Parenting has changed so much in the last 30 years, and the expectation that schools have of parents' involvement is radically different. Like, parents have to be really hands-on and active, which there's a classism involved in this, because if you are a working class family and you have two parents who say work long hours, they don't have the availability in the evenings or for PTA meetings that are after school or to go on field trips. Working class parents do not, of any race, do not have the ability to participate in the schools the way they are presently set up.
Finally picked up on it.
Does everybody know about this phenomenon of the snowflake culture and the participation trophy backlash? Like, if every kid on your soccer team, if you'd finish in 8th place in your league but everybody gets a participation trophy, then you take away the incentive to strive, right, to improve.
You get a trophy.
And you get a trophy.
You get a trophy.
So there's a real backlash against this generation. This is why people are so hard on the millennials, is because they've been taught in school that they're special snowflakes and they get a participation trophy no matter how their team does.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, listen, I have enjoyed this conversation very much, but our time is up and I have to transition to getting ready for worship upstairs. So I'm going to turn this over to you all for the next 10 minutes. You can continue to talk about whatever you want to, either this topic or anything else on your mind, and I will see you at 10:30 for worship.